The sound of ragged breath mingled with the rustling of dry grass under the scorching sun of the Serengeti. On the vibrant savanna, Lyra was no longer a proud predator. She was the target of a brutal pursuit. A deep wound in her side, a crimson mark from a lion's teeth, turned every stride into ultimate torture. Behind her, dust clouds rose along with the aggressive barks of a baboon troop. They were not just defending territory, they wanted to finish off an exhausted enemy in a violent coup of nature. Lyra's resignation created a painful paradox in the heart of the plains. A hyena with a bite force capable of crushing elephant bones now could only crawl in submission. She stumbled, her fur matted with blood and road dust, but immediately stood up with extraordinary willpower. Lyra's eyes showed no panic. Instead, there was a cold, heartbreaking calculation. Rather than seeking safety in rocky crevices, she ventured into the open grassland, deliberately exposing herself to the fangs of the enraged baboons. Every weary step Lyra took was actually a life or death move. She was turning herself into an intentional sacrificial lamb, using her bleeding life to lure the threat far away from the small thicket behind her. There, in the shadows of the leaves, a fragile secret existed. Today, Lyra's strength did not lie in her claws, but in her ability to endure pain to protect the only thing that mattered to her in this harsh world. The pursuit grew more intense as the baboon troop, led by an alpha male named Kovu, began to close the circle. Kovu was a seasoned warrior with fangs as long as a leopard's and a violent temperament. He barked out piercing commands, directing his troop with terrifying precision. They did not attack all at once, but surrounded Lyra in a tactical formation, taking turns nipping at her heels and open wounds, turning the escape into a slow execution. Under the midday sun that seemed pleasant but was actually thick with hostility, Lyra began to stagger. Her hind legs showed signs of failing, dragging on the parched earth. The pain from the lion wound shifted from a burning sensation to sharp contractions, draining her last bits of strength. Yet, whenever the baboons showed signs of backing off, Lyra would intentionally let out a weak moan or pretend to collapse. It was a strange act, a contrary provocation. She did not want them to give up. She needed them to focus entirely on her, on this dying target, so that Kova's sharp eyes would not have a single free moment to glance toward the acacia grove she had just passed. The more aggressive the baboons became, the further Lyra led them toward the open plains. She knew every square meter of this land, knowing that her children's lives depended on how many blows she could endure. Once, Kova lunged forward, his claws grazing Lyra's ear, leaving a new tear. Instead of growling back, Lyra only bowed her head slightly, a gesture of absolute submission never before seen in a species as proud as the hyena. In the mind of that mother, pride held no value compared to the safety of the small creatures trembling in the dark burrow. She accepted being the loser, accepted being mocked by a weaker species, as long as she was still breathing to continue this distraction. The savanna sun shone on Lyra's wounded body, creating a poignant contrast, the radiant beauty of nature against the cruelty of the survival laws she carried on her shoulders. Just as the baboon siege reached its peak, the atmosphere on the savanna suddenly changed. The aggressive barks of Kova's troop fell silent, replaced by fearful and cautious chirping. From the tall grass to the east, three golden, towering figures emerged with absolute authority. It was a group of young lions, opportunistic predators patrolling their territory. They were attracted by the smell of blood from Lyra's wound and the commotion of the baboons. Now, Lyra fell into an unthinkable situation, caught in a death grip between the enraged baboons behind and the cold-blooded killers in front. Lyra's heart pounded in her thin chest. Pain and blood loss made her vision blur, but a mother's instinct became sharper than ever. She knew she could not escape both. In a decisive moment, Lyra made a move that would shock even the most experienced rangers. Instead of fleeing from the baboons to avoid the lions, she crawled flat on the ground, dragging herself straight into the middle of Kova's baboon formation. She chose to face the very ones who had just tortured her, turning them into a shield between herself and the big cats. The appearance of the lions completely changed the situation. To the baboons, a hyena was a nuisance, but a lion was a mortal threat. Kova's pack protection instinct flared up, Instead of continuing to tear at Lyra, the alpha male spun around, baring his long fangs and letting out a piercing alarm roar. The entire troop followed suit. They began jumping on low acacia branches, throwing pieces of dry bark and hard seeds at the lions, creating a scene of chaotic madness. The lions, being calculating predators, began to hesitate. They did not want to get involved in a messy brawl with dozens of enraged primates just to trade it for a hyena that was already near death. Lyra lay flat at the feet of the baboons, her head low, her breath weak, but her eyes never leaving the silhouette of her greatest enemy. In that chaos, a wordless alliance was formed. The baboons did not save Lyra out of kindness. They were fighting for their own safety against a larger common enemy. The noise grew so loud that the lions finally backed away, flicking their tails in frustration before sauntering off, leaving behind a battlefield of dust and harsh sounds. Lyra had survived through the narrowest crack of fate, thanks to the very ones who had wanted her life. As the silhouettes of the lions faded into the horizon and the baboons began to disperse toward the dry riverbed, the savannah returned to a rare silence. Lyra lay still in the grass for a long time, her chest heaving with intermittent breaths. She waited until the last chirps of the monkeys were far away before daring to use her remaining strength to rise. The wounds on her body had begun to dry under the heat of the sun, but the pain remained dull and throbbing like thousands of needles piercing her skin. She dragged herself along, no longer a swift escape, but a journey of will. Lyra returned to the old path, toward the old acacia grove with its scrawny canopy. This was her true goal from the beginning. She moved cautiously, her ears constantly swiveling to listen for any strange noise. Approaching a thick thorn bush hidden behind a fallen trunk, she stopped and let out a low, trembling call from deep in her throat. It was a code of love, a signal that only the beings inside could understand. From the deep darkness of a small burrow well protected by sharp thorns, two tiny heads with coal-black fur suddenly popped out. They were two hyena cubs, only a few weeks old, their eyes not yet clear on the world, but their instincts telling them their mother had returned. They waddled out, trembling, and tucked themselves into Lyra's belly, seeking warmth and sweet milk. Lyra collapsed, letting the little ones huddle against her. She began using her rough tongue to lick away the dirt and remaining blood on her body, an act of care both gentle and filled with protective instinct. In that moment, the truth of the previous breathtaking chase was fully revealed. Lyra had not fled out of cowardice. She had fought by becoming prey. She knew that if the baboons found this burrow, her children would have no chance of survival. Therefore, she chose the most painful way, luring the enemy as far as possible using her own wounded body. Looking at the image of the exhausted Lyra, her eyes glowing with a quiet happiness seeing her children safe, one understands. On this savannah, sometimes silent sacrifice is more powerful than a lion's roar. Under the shade of the acacia, the three of them merged together, creating an oasis of peace in the heart of a land that never stops shifting. As the last rays of the day faded, turning from golden to the deep purple of twilight, Lyra still lay there, enveloping her children in her thin arms. The silence of the savannah now seemed like a worthy reward for the mother who had gone through a long day on the edge of life and death. The small sniffing sounds of the two cubs finding their mother's warm milk were the only sounds breaking the silence. But to Lyra, it was the most grand music she had ever heard. Lyra's story is not just a simple survival battle. It is a profound reminder of how we view the natural world. We often label hyenas as villains, cowardly scavengers who only rely on numbers. But on this sunny afternoon, Lyra proved the opposite. She was a warrior, a brilliant strategist, and above all, a great mother. Her strength did not lie in muscle or fangs, but in the ability to endure adversity for a purpose higher than herself. Nature, with all its fierceness, is a fair teacher. It teaches us that in every living being, no matter how small or misunderstood, lies a story of courage. Kova's fierce baboons, or the proud young lions, were not evil. They were just pieces in a complex dance of survival, where the line between enemy and ally is sometimes only an alarm roar away. The fact that Lyra's enemy accidentally became her savior was the unexpected stroke of destiny. As night fell and the stars began to twinkle over the Serengeti sky, Lyra could finally close her eyes in a rare moment of peace. She had completed her mission. The cubs would grow up carrying the resilient blood of the mother who used her whole life to protect them. The world outside would still be full of danger, but tonight, under the old acacia tree, love triumphed over fear. It is a beautiful and hopeful story, a testament that silent sacrifice always has the power to change the world, even if it is just the small world inside a thick thorn bush in the heart of the savannah.